In a world torn apart by war and chaos, one man stood unshaken, a man who stared into the face of fear and never blinked. His name was Winston Churchill. He wasn't born to inspire, he was born to endure. And through his brutal honesty, iron discipline, and relentless courage, he forged a mindset so powerful that it still echoes through time. These are not ordinary life tips. These are the ruthless rules of Winston Churchill. Rules that will break your weakness, sharpen your mind, and rebuild you into something unstoppable. Let's begin. Rule number 1. Turn your pain into power. Churchill once said, "If you're going through hell, keep going." Most people hear that line, nod their heads and scroll away. But Churchill lived it. During World War II, when bombs shattered London night after night, he didn't run, he didn't hide, he led. He turned pain into direction. Every loss fueled his next decision. Every failure made his words stronger. When the world burns around you, you only have 2 choices. Either become the ashes or become the fire that rises from them. Churchill chose fire. He transformed suffering into strength, not by ignoring pain, but by mastering it. He used his darkest nights as fuel for the speeches that saved nations. So next time you're broken, don't ask, "Why me?" Ask, "What can this pain teach me?" That question alone will separate you from 99% of people who give up. The ones who rise because they don't let the storm define them. They let it refine them. Rule number 2. Discipline is freedom. Churchill's mornings began before dawn. While most slept, he read, wrote, planned, and prepared his mind for war. He knew one truth most people still ignore. Without discipline, your potential is useless. He didn't wait for motivation. He built habits so ruthless that laziness had no place to hide. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. When he failed, he didn't complain. He adjusted, recalibrated, and kept going. Even during the darkest hours of the Blitz, when defeat seemed certain, he forced himself to think, to write, to lead. Not because he wanted to, but because duty demanded it. And that's the secret. You don't need motivation. You need momentum. You need to wake up and do what must be done, especially when you don't feel like it. That's what separates men who make history from those who vanish into it. Discipline doesn't limit you. It liberates you. It gives you the power to control the only thing that truly matters, yourself. So remember this. Pain will test you. Discipline will define you. Rule number 3. Master your fear, or it will master you. Winston Churchill was not fearless. He was terrified of failure, of death, of letting his people down. But here's what made him different. He never let fear make his decisions. During the darkest nights of World War II, the skies above London burned. Sirens screamed. Families hid underground. And yet, Churchill, the man at the center of it all, walked the rooftops during air raids just to watch the bombs fall. He wanted to see the storm up close, because he believed the only way to conquer fear is to face it. Most people run from fear, hoping it'll disappear, but the more you run, the stronger it becomes. Churchill faced it head-on, every single day, and through that repetition, he killed the power of fear. He turned anxiety into awareness. He turned panic into focus. He trained his mind to stay calm inside chaos. That's why people followed him, not because he had all the answers, but because he was the calm inside the fire. Ask yourself, when fear comes, do you let it control you, or do you make it your teacher? Every great mind, from warriors to philosophers, understood this truth. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of it. So the next time fear whispers, "You can't," you whisper back, "Watch me." Because courage is born in that moment, not before, not after, right there. Rule number 4. Choose words that move. Nations Churchill didn't command armies. He commanded words, and his words moved millions. When Britain was losing hope, when death hung over the cities like a shadow, it wasn't weapons that saved them, it was his voice. He stood before microphones and said, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender." Those weren't just words, they were fire, burning straight into the hearts of people who had nothing left to hold on to. Churchill understood something most people never will. Words can build empires or destroy them. He prepared every sentence like a soldier preparing for battle. He didn't speak to impress. He spoke to ignite belief. That's why even enemies respected him, because his conviction was unshakable and his words carried the weight of his soul. In life, you don't need to be loud, you need to be clear. When you speak, mean it. When you promise, keep it. And when you lead, let your words carry purpose. The world listens to those who believe in what they say, and Churchill believed completely. He mastered his fear, he mastered his words, and with that power, he led a nation through fire. Every great leader carries two faces, one the world sees, and one the world never will. For Churchill, that hidden face was solitude. Behind the noise, the speeches, the decisions, there was silence. And in that silence, he built his strength. Let's dive deeper into the mindset that turned him from a man into a legend. Rule number 5. Use solitude as a weapon. Most people fear being alone, but Winston Churchill embraced it. He would often disappear from meetings, hide inside his study, or take long walks in the gardens with no one around. Not because he hated people, but because he needed distance from their chaos to hear his own thoughts clearly. He believed solitude was not loneliness. It was strategy. When you're surrounded by noise, you lose direction. When you isolate yourself, you hear your inner voice. Churchill used that silence to think, to write, to plan. He called it his invisible armor. That's where he sharpened his ideas and faced his doubts, alone, before the world ever saw him speak. Solitude taught him patience. It made him dangerous, because while others were reacting emotionally, he was thinking logically. Most people today run from silence. They distract themselves to avoid facing reality. But solitude is where greatness is born. In the dark, when no one's watching, that's where the fire starts to grow. So if you want power, learn to stand alone, because the one who can survive his own silence can survive anything. Rule number 6. Be brutally honest, even when it hurts. Churchill never lied to comfort people. He spoke the truth, even when it broke them. When the war was at its worst and London was burning, he didn't say, "We'll be fine." He said, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." He gave people the truth, raw, ugly, painful truth. And that's exactly why they trusted him. People don't follow perfect leaders, they follow real ones. Churchill's honesty earned him respect, even from his enemies. He believed that false hope destroys nations faster than defeat. That's why, instead of sugarcoating reality, he taught people to fight through it. Because truth hurts, but it also heals. He once said, "If you're going through hell, keep going. Not wait, not pray it ends, but keep going." That single sentence became a lifeline for millions. Honesty made Churchill immortal. Because when his voice said, "We shall never surrender," people believed, not because he promised victory, but because they knew he'd never lie about the cost of it. Solitude gave him strength. Honesty gave him power. Together, they built an unshakable man. Failure. It's the one thing everyone fears, the one thing most people hide from, but not Winston Churchill. He didn't fear failure. He collected it. He studied it. He turned it into fuel, because in his world, failure wasn't the end. It was the beginning of greatness. Rule number 7. Turn failure into fuel. Churchill's career was full of disasters. He was blamed for military defeats. He was kicked out of politics. He was humiliated publicly, called a fool, a drunk, and even a national embarrassment. But each time he fell, he didn't disappear. He came back stronger, sharper, more dangerous. He once said, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." That sentence wasn't philosophy. It was his life story. When he lost power, he didn't complain. He read, he studied, he wrote. He rebuilt himself from the ashes. And when the world went to war again, the same man they once mocked returned as the only leader who could save them. Every failure gave him a lesson. Every defeat gave him experience. Every insult became his fire. He believed that pain was the only teacher that never lied, so he learned to thank his failures because they made him fearless. Most people stop after one fall. Churchill used his failures as steps to climb higher. He didn't run from pain, he used it. That's the secret. Pain refines you. Failure trains you, and those who rise after falling become unstoppable. Rule number 8. Take insane risks, or stay ordinary forever. Churchill believed that playing safe is another form of slow death. He once said, "You have enemies? Good. It means you've stood up for something." He didn't live for approval. He lived for conviction. He took decisions no one else dared to. When others begged for peace, he prepared for war. When others doubted victory, he demanded it. Every move he made was a gamble, but he gambled with purpose. That's the difference between a fool and a legend. Churchill knew that boldness creates momentum, and momentum creates power. People around him thought he was crazy, but that madness saved an entire nation. He believed that life tests your courage, and if you always wait for the perfect moment, you'll die waiting. He used to say, "I never worry about action, only inaction, because hesitation kills faster than any mistake." Think about that. Most people spend their lives analyzing, doubting, overthinking, while the brave few move first, fail fast, and learn faster. Churchill moved, even when he was unsure, even when the risk was massive, because in his mind, doing nothing was a bigger danger than losing everything. Failure forged his spirit. Risk defined his destiny. Churchill didn't just fight wars. He fought mediocrity, fear, and doubt. Every scar he carried was proof that he had lived, fully, fiercely, fearlessly. When the world was burning, when hope had vanished, when darkness ruled Europe, one man stood, not because he was fearless, but because he refused to surrender. That man was Winston Churchill. He wasn't born a hero. He was forged into one by failure, war, and fire. And as his story reaches its end, we arrive at the last two ruthless rules that defined not just his life, but the very spirit of human resilience. Rule number B9, command loyalty, not fear. In the middle of war, Churchill had no luxury of perfection. He made mistakes. He lost men. He faced criticism every single day. But his soldiers followed him, not because they had to, but because they believed in him. He had this rare ability to make people feel part of something greater than themselves. When he spoke, his words carried weight, because he spoke with conviction, not calculation. He once said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." That's why his men trusted him. He didn't pretend to be perfect. He was real, raw, and unshakably human. He led from the heart, not from the throne, and in return, his people gave him loyalty that outlived the war. Because loyalty isn't commanded by rank, it's earned through truth. He taught the world that if you want loyalty, you must first give faith. If you want respect, you must first respect others. Even in chaos, he protected his men, he inspired his people, and he gave them one thing no weapon could: hope. Rule number 10. Greatness demands sacrifice. Churchill's final rule is also his most painful one. He believed that true greatness is not built on comfort, it's built on sacrifice. He sacrificed peace of mind for duty. He sacrificed his youth for service. He sacrificed love, sleep, and health, just to stand guard when the world needed him most. He could have retired. He could have stayed silent. He could have chosen an easy life. But he didn't. Because he believed that destiny doesn't choose the comfortable. It chooses the courageous. When Nazi Germany was crushing Europe, when Britain stood alone, and even his own allies doubted victory, Churchill's voice became the roar that kept an entire nation alive. "We shall fight on the beaches," he said. "We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall never surrender." Those weren't just words. Those were the heartbeat of a broken nation, and the sound of a man who refused to give up. He didn't win the war alone, but without him, the war might have never been won at all. That's the truth about sacrifice. You may never get the credit, you may never be understood. But the world moves forward because someone, somewhere, refused to stop fighting. Winston Churchill's story isn't about politics or war, it's about the power of the human will. He was mocked, he was broken, he was hated. But in the end, he stood taller than anyone. He taught us that leadership is not about being right all the time, but about being unbreakable when everything goes wrong. He showed that courage is not the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. And he proved that even a single voice, when backed by truth and purpose, can echo louder than an entire army. So if you ever feel lost, if you ever feel small, remember Churchill. Remember the man who turned failure into fire, who faced hate with courage, who carried a nation on his shoulders when everyone else had given up. Because in the end, greatness is not born, it's chosen. And the world still needs people who choose to fight, to believe, and to lead, even when no one else does. Winston Churchill, a name carved not in stone, but in the heart of every soul that refuses to surrender. These were the 10 ruthless rules of Winston Churchill. Rules that turned a flawed man into a legend. Rules that remind us, no matter the time, no matter the place, the human spirit can still conquer